Welcome back to Resilience+Rise, the podcast, the space where we excavate the extraordinary from the heart of challenges. I'm your host, Thomas Scaria, and if you're feeling the pull towards a deeper purpose, a more impactful legacy beyond the peaks you've already conquered, then you're in the right space. Just just like 26.2 transformative miles I explored in this book, life's most significant chapters often begin where we dare to redefine our finish line. And instantly, this book is available to buy. Today, when I mentioned about conquering various heights or the different places or the peaks, I've got a guest who have reached a certain point and she still goes on conquering far and beyond the different horizons. Megan Henry. She's an actor, an author, a producer, a transformational leadership speaker. As an actor, Megan has won awards and has been nominated at film festivals. She has starred and produced fiction drama, short films, and different types of media. Behind the camera, she has co produced, as I mentioned, an award winning socially conscious film, Good Guys with Guns.
Mhm.
She's a sought after speaker. Megan captivates the audience with her provocative but yet empowering messages. So, without wasting much time, Megan, welcome to Resilience+Rise, the podcast.
Hello,
Hi.
Thomas. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure, pleasure. So, Megan, as what I just read out was just a short snippets about your varied
Mhm.
uh, whether I would say it as a professional or a personal graph, it has been so the spectrum has been very, very varied. And in today's world where people are confined maybe in that 9 to 5, now it's not 9 to 5, maybe 8 to 4 or 8 to 5 type of routine, wherein they for them to break the mold becomes very difficult or they are so just confined. You have gone ahead and explored so many different areas, so whether it has been in televisions, whether it has been in film, whether it has been in different areas, and you have also taken the step behind getting things together. So if you could tell what's been happening about in your life that you are from how you started, how you got into uh, the movie area, and what really was your vibe or the purpose that was been happening with you.
Yeah, great question. I love telling stories. I love exploring different facets of our beingness, of consciousness, of the icky, sticky, tricky, even downright shitty emotions that we have. And but it's interesting because if I really think about it, and thank you for your kind words. By the way, I'm still figuring it out, right? I still am like, I don't really know that we ever completely have it figured out, whatever that means. Um, but I will tell you, I have a love of telling stories and discovering who I am. But the biggest challenge for me, right, here's the paradox. I was holding on to such a disempowering story that actually was part of driving me to be so, I guess, accomplished or to go for all of these things, because I thought that was required of me in order to matter, in order to mean something. And I just wanted to feel like I had a voice that made a difference. But I wasn't always coming from the most wholesome place. I
Oh,
was trying to extract from life. Give me this so I feel that. Do you know what
mhm.
I'm saying? Like, if this happens, then I am worthy. Or if this happens, I'm important. Whew, all these stories that we hold on, and all these narratives and meanings that we give them about the things that do or don't happen to us in our lives. I was running away from this story that I had about myself, instead of just going, you know what? I'm the author. And if I just take a minute and learn to like love all the parts of myself that I have shame around, then what will happen? What will I create? How will I lead?
So when you mentioned that there was shame,
Mm,
or there were areas where there were wide gaping gaps, what are we talking about?
yeah. So I was adopted. I mean,
Okay.
at 3, not yesterday. Um, anyway, right? You never know. We're in a wonky world. You never know. But anyway, and my parents are wonderful. And again, this is just the story that I created. But I felt that. Um, ooh, I guess I'm getting a little emotional. I felt that my birth, my existence, actually just in utero, because I met my birth mother, who's lovely as well, and she would, share with me years later that it was a constant battle between her heart and her mind. And I've never been pregnant, but I could imagine that. But so when I was younger, I felt like my existence must have been a source of incredible joy and pain, right? Somebody's a gain at the expense of somebody's loss. And so I had a lot of shame around that. I took that on. It wasn't mine to take on. Nobody asked me to take it on, but I didn't have the tools to see, oh my gosh, this is a gift. And somebody chose to, send me off down a different path. I didn't know how to um, integrate with that. And
Mhm.
so I felt this incredible pressure. Well, I guess I better get it right.
Mm.
What does that mean? And then society tells us, well, you have to do this and you have to do that. You have to be a good girl and you have to, you better not be too much and you better not be too little and you better not take up space, and all of just the conflicting stories and narratives that we're fed, and that a lot of us still hold on to. And so that was sort of the shame. It was like I felt my whole life I was sort of one foot on the gas and one foot off, waiting for permission. Is this okay? Is this going to bring shame to me or to my family?
So you moved into acting,
Hmm.
wherein you would don different hats of different characters. Did that fulfill you? And when you were seeking
It
or
well,
working?
it doesn't. Here's the thing, and I've had more of an epiphany. You know, this is actually the first time, I will admit, this is the first time I'm in a new acting class. It's been a while, just to feed my soul, and the industry's in a contraction. And I've had a lot of trauma, we all have, around self-expression. And something specific happened early on where I was, heckled, and it was just really terrible. And so every time I've been in an acting class, it's like that timid one foot in, one foot out, but I feel all of this just self-consciousness and trauma and drama. This is the first acting class where I'm actually excited to jump in and play. And there's no pretense, there's no needing to get it right, because I'm healing that wound of, I need acting to do this for me. I need people to see me in a certain way. Does that make sense?
True.
I'm actually allowing myself now, and I think it's making me a better actor, because I don't need the audience to validate me. I can just play in this realm of make believe and be of greater service that way.
So when did this pivot of acceptance of your wholeness come about?
Well, it's still a work in progress.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, whew. um, I mean, it's been this 20-year odyssey of just working with, one facilitator and one healer and one mentor. But I think, honestly, Thomas, literally like a year ago, I just got so sick of my shit. I got so sick of throwing myself pity parties of, why isn't life going the way I want? I was so tired of trying to force outcomes and wrestle life to the ground to prove that I was, worthy, or look at me, I can do this and I can accomplish that. And aren't I so great? You know what I mean? That's a form of entitlement, really. And that's what sort of adoption taught me in a backwards way.
Okay. Also, as I just read out, you have been in the space of a keynote speaker, a transformational leadership area. So when I look begin, that's kind of a judgmental call that I usually do. Is that when people come to the forefront,
Uh-huh.
asking people this is the way they can change, it usually happens because there has been a change within their own self, because they get into that space wherein they realize that yes, this happened to me, it was not good, but now I've changed and it has turned better. So let me go out and tell how
Mhm.
to be better humans. So did something like that happen, or it was just that you're just a natural born speaker that you just went out and say, okay, let me see what how this works out.
It's interesting. Some people, right, we all have different journeys and paths. Some people, the literal or proverbial rug is literally pulled out from under them. They lose a
Hmm.
job, they get a horrible disease, somebody dies, and it sort of invites them into this change, right? They maybe look at their life differently, or they're willing to surrender to some greater purpose or clear sight. I didn't really have anything like that. On the outside, on paper, everything looked great. I just was sort of like rotting on the inside. I was playing very small, right? Mediocre. And looking around, going, I know that I have this potential. I know that I have this drive in my heart and these things that I want to share, but I can't quite formulate it. And so I would try to force or mimic other people, like, oh, right, that sounds good. Maybe I can, share that message, but it wasn't grounded. And as I say, I'm still a work in progress, but I had the courage with a mentor to go to really look at where I was refusing to share my gifts with the world unless there was a guarantee that I would be loved, accepted, significant, compensated, because I didn't want to get it wrong. I didn't want that pain of feeling like I wasn't what somebody wanted. But again, that's entitlement. I have to have the courage to walk my path without needing external validation. And that's when, and it takes a lot of bravery. Can I love myself if none of this stuff pans out? What am I making the success or the failure mean? It's just a story. You know what I mean? But that takes a lot of courage. It's not easy to go, you know what? If I'm a, whatever the ego mind deems as a failure,
Hmm.
I still love myself. Can I still feel like, well, there's what's the word? Magic in this mess. And
Yes.
so that's when I went, you know what? If I've been living sort of this life of entitlement, but not in the way that we think, meaning wanting the world to say, you're great, I love you, you have something to offer, you're valued, you're free. But I was unwilling to be that embodied energy first. That's entitlement. That's not empowerment. And that's what I talk about. The real revolution begins within. It is futile and short lived to wait or expect for somebody else or something else outside of us to change. We have to be that energetic embodiment grounded in that truth first. And that is, I believe, what leadership is missing. It's not about dictating or forcing our will or our perspective onto somebody else. It's just about how do I live in my truth without needing external validation, and thereby I naturally just remind you how to be in your truth. And then within that, right, with then we're all going to coalesce and cooperate and collaborate and thrive and all the things.
Wow. So what happened for that shift? I know you mentioned it takes a lot of courage, but there has, I mean, I don't say there has to be, but there would have been small steps which would have to be taken, because what you mentioned, what you were, and the acknowledgement that I am enough.
Yeah.
I am loved. I am. Coming to that point, and you just mentioned something which was very, very powerful, was something about wherein you said the inner game,
Uh-huh.
the revolution, the real revolution. So, for you to come on that particular part of when you talk about the real revolution, what triggered you or what made Megan remove that mask, what she was wearing, to a more truer self of herself?
Honestly, because I hit my 40s and I looked at my life and I thought, a lot of this, what I've accomplished, feels good in some respects, but it also feels superficial. And a lot of things in my life hadn't changed. I still was needing the outer reality to shift in order for me to feel free or to feel authentic or to feel natural. I was moving through the world like very uncomfortable all the time. Oh, I better, act this way so I get this person's approval. And honestly, in my 40s, a lot of people say this happens in their 50s, right? You just get so tired of caring what other people think. But I got so tired of my life looking and feeling the same.
Hmm. And then what happened?
More mentors, more, deep dives. I'm very much somebody like I can be very stubborn, man. And I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. And then I
Hmm.
realize
Okay.
maybe there's really nothing to figure out. Maybe there's nothing broken. It's more of a, as one of my mentors says, it's more of an unraveling and an unbecoming. It's not somebody that I need to become. It's what do I need to let go of that is keeping me from being right my more truthful version, from being more natural, more comfortable, less needy, less entitled.
Wow. So, when you're talking about these elements, if you're talking, you also, when the elements that you mentioned, these are required for your inner stability.
Mhm.
And what you just mentioned is that you were getting things done, you were talking to people to get a validation,
Uh-huh.
to get something, but most of it was external. So, when you started realizing the inner braces or the inner stability within your own self, what started changing?
And it's subtle shifts. I noticed that I would, well, first of all, I love being triggered because our triggers are our greatest teachers, but I would start embracing my triggers differently. It doesn't mean that I don't have bad days. Of course, I'm human, but I would notice I wouldn't get as caught in the self pity story. Ugh, nothing works out for me. See, I do all the things and see, nothing still works out. Right. I realized where I had these patterns and stories that kept me comfortable because if nothing ever works out, then I don't have to actually put myself out in the world and risk disappointment, failure, humiliation, criticism, judgment, disappointment. But I was reinforcing the disappointment by not allowing myself to share my gifts, to go out in the world, to explore. Do you know what I mean? So, but even noticing the pattern is huge. But awareness is the first step, right? And then going, okay, I have to take responsibility for this and do it with as much curiosity and compassion as I can. Um, but, also again, the revolution is internal. So all of the changes that I wanted to try to extract from life, I had to say, okay, so if I don't want to wait for permission, if I just want to go out there and share my gifts with the world, then I have to stop waiting for permission. I have to send the email. I have to write the scary blog post. I have to go talk to this person. You know what I mean? It seems so simple, but I just had to go, all right, well, I've been sitting on my ass, not literally, but, in large part, I've been waiting for, all of these opportunities to present themselves, but I've just got to go out there and just meet life.
Actually, that gets me to because when I'm having podcasts and when people talk generally about what's been happening, and specifically, there are people who go through that grind about looking out for external validation. And because of seeking for a validation, they have been taken advantage of with the field that you have been, that is in the media or the film or acting world, etc., wherein you are shown that your vulnerability is not about you knowing your own self, but wanting the title, wanting the accolades, or wanting maybe a role or whatever it is, a validation. Have you gone through some of those particular things wherein you felt hurt, you felt betrayed, you felt why? And especially when you said that previous one, why is this happening to me? So this
Right.
comes from there, yes.
Sure. I think I haven't, again, I have had a like pretty even keel life. In other words, like nothing drastic, nothing major. We all have different paths. I have begged and pleaded with the universe sometimes, shake shit up. You know what I mean? So that it forces me to change. A lot of times in my life, it was like, well, if I would just lose this job, then maybe I would have the courage to go out there and do the thing. And my soul's like, honey, you're going to just choose it for yourself. We're not going to make it that easy for you. You know what I mean? Not that it's easy, but you know what I'm saying? No, nobody was like forcing my hand. Um, so I don't have anything that felt like it was really volatile or abrupt, but it was more just, meeting people and nurturing relationships, or what I thought was nurturing relationships from a very pure place. And then realizing, when those relationships disintegrated, or when they never called me for the movie, or maybe they called somebody else. And it's like, wait a minute. I thought that there was an agreement that we were going to work together, but I have to look at also, was I being transactional or was I being like transformational? Do you know what I mean?
Beautiful, fantastic. Okay, so uh, there's one statement which I say time and again, and when I'm a guest, I say it loud and clear is that every morning I get up with a choice. Am I going to live the day or am I going to exist through the day?
Mm,
And that gives me a trigger.
I love that.
And that's how I have always worked around with that. Again, a while back, maybe it was a little more than few years back, wherein I realized that I was just existing, going through the flow, going through the motion. And they say that be still, but the problem was I became so still, I never knew whether I was going or coming.
Mm,
Till things changed. I took on to myself that I got to change. And that's when we call it as a universe, suddenly there was a upheaval that got me to another level.
yeah.
A good example is a podcast like this, talking to amazing humans like you, and say that because had I been in the previous stage, maybe I wouldn't be able to. I would have said, okay, they are there. I don't think so I'll be able to talk. But now there's a sense of courage, a sense that, you know what, I can go and talk to Megan Henry.
Mm.
Yeah, she's an actress, but does that stop me from just going and approaching her? I don't think so.
And I love that you say that. How powerful, right? That you realized that you were just sort of existing, right? Did you feel in some ways that you were maybe just kind of being like
Yeah.
blown about with the wind? And that reminds me, and that I thank you for sharing that. It's very profound and it's a great visual. But I think I probably had a little bit of that too, right? In the energy of waiting, and I had to realize, it's kind of like, it reminds me, I don't know who it was that said most people don't live 72 years, they live the same life 72 times.
Yep.
And that was a little bit of a revelation that I had. And I don't know if you're familiar with the gene keys, but Richard Rudd so eloquently says, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher this, but basically, he says, what if we just stop making life a destination and just have it be, or I'm sorry, what if we start making life a goal and just have it be the destination? Have an adventure, right? Enjoy the outcomes as much as the journey, because the goal is always going to change. And that kind of felt like a permission slip to go, oh, right. It doesn't mean that we don't want things or we don't strive for things, but we don't need them in
True.
order to feel at peace, whole, stabilized, as you said, right? Embracing the magic in the mess.
The message which always comes from the mess, that's always there, right? There's always a mess for some reason.
Right.
And if you can understand the message, lo behold, that when the difference takes place. So now that you have been in these different spaces,
Uh-huh.
wherein at one point of time you were scared even to acknowledge your own greatness,
Right.
and then you came to a point that, you know what, I do not need somebody to pat my back. I have God within myself. It has been a process, and as you mentioned, the process is still going on.
Of course.
So when you talk about these elements, what would you what would you tell the listeners that, okay, for because when I'm having these podcasts, I know a lot of people, they are either listening and going through their daily life routines, but when I have observed you talking, I can see the how you talk when you have transformed.
Mm.
What would you suggest for the people that if they have to make harness the energy from within,
Mhm.
what would you talk to them about?
And we touched on this a little earlier. It's learning, and you may need a facilitator, a coach. I certainly did. It's learning to feel safety with all of our emotions without being like knocked off center, right? Because the emotions themselves aren't bad. It's the stories and the narratives we create about who we think we are with these emotions. And like what I had to do, waiting, 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 waiting. Okay, life, when are you gonna like give me permission to go out there and share my gifts? What are we trying to extract from life, or what are we expecting life to give us that we're not giving ourselves first, or the world as an energy? We want inner peace, we want peace. Do we feel like calm within ourselves? Do we learn how to like regulate? Are we blaming other people? Those little types of things, you know what I mean? Why doesn't somebody see my value? Do you see your value?
Fantastic. So seek within
Yeah.
rather than looking outside. Fantastic. Just being mindful of the time. Is there anything else that you would like to end this conversation?
I mean, I would just say to the mess and the magic, because all of it is power to either repurpose or restore or rebalance or reshape, you know?
Fantastic. So the change comes from within.
Uh-huh.
And wow. So, guys, what we just heard was Megan's journey. And as she mentioned, she's still continuing on the journey. She's still being a learner. She's just evolving. And one of the key messages that I heard away was that revolution is not external, it's an inner game. And also, she mentioned the potential of being seeking within. Again, challenging individuals to take the ownership of their personal narratives, wherein she mentioned about the emotions. Let that be. And also, there was another very important word that she has been using, that's a trigger. So, the question currently is that what are you triggering to evolve the resilience or to build yourself to be a greater self? Well, I've been talking to amazing human around over here who have discovered or on that path of rediscovering the greatness. So, with this, Megan, I would like to conclude today's session. Thank
Mhm.
you so very much for your space and time. It was
Thank-
a wonderful conversation.
Yes, thank you.